Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's meeting of the Nashville Microsoft Azure User Group, our October meeting. For those of you who are new, we normally start off the meeting with a little presentation on the group itself. You should be able to see my screen. Just to go quick, and I'm not going to take a long time to go through this, especially for those folks who've been here before and get bored by it. This is summarizing what we're all about. We're all about Azure, development, infrastructure, management, any topic related to Azure. And we kind of mix things up with developer and non-developer topics, with topics of interest to CIOs and CTOs, architects, developers. We try to be as broad as possible. We were founded in 2013 with only 4 members. I founded the group back then, and now we have over 2,000. So, we're always growing. It seems like we're growing every month we get more members, but we could choose more members. So tell everyone you know about us and have them, join the group. Doesn't cost anything. It's all free. In fact, I'm kind of proud of the fact that I've run this group for over 9 years with no money. So, meetings, currently we're meeting online only. When we meet, you can see what's crossed out there. When we meet in person or hybrid, we meet over at Vaco in Brentwood. And we normally start with food and networking. Well, obviously, we can't do food here. And networking is sometimes a little bit hard too. But if there's questions you want to ask, if there's things you want to talk about, don't feel shy about bringing it up in the meeting. Let us know what topics, what Azure-related topics you want us to cover in future meetings. And also, if you would like to present something to the group that's Azure-related, we'd love to have our members present. So just, get in touch with us. We have a board of directors. I'm the Azure Group founder and president, and I'm an Azure Solutions Architect. I always jokingly call my group, myself the group's benevolent dictator. So I kind of like to run the group for the good of the community. Roger Dahlman's a co-founder, and he's a vice president over at Deloitte here in Nashville. Tim Warner is probably a name that you recognize. Tim is extremely well known in the Azure community. He's a co-founder. Now has gone to work for Microsoft. So he's a documentation specialist now working for Microsoft. He's on the board. He's an MVP. You might know him from Pluralsight and other training materials that he's put out on the internet. That's his website, techtrainertim.com. Matt Puckett is a Microsoft Principal Cloud Solution, National Cloud Solutions Architect. And Matt was really way back at the beginning. He's provided support for us when we used to meet over at Microsoft. So he's been a great, sponsor of the group. And Jack Hagler is a permanent refreshment sponsor for the last 7 years. Actually, I have to update the slide. It's really more like 8 years. I can remember running user groups in New York where I had to scrounge every month for someone to pay for the refreshments for the meeting. So we really love the fact that Vaco is willing to provide refreshments for us. And on the subject of sponsors, Microsoft, we don't meet at Microsoft anymore, but they're still paying for our meetup dues. So since I used to have to pay for that out of my own pocket, I'm kind of happy about that. Vaco used to provide meeting space and will again when we meet in person, but now they're providing this Zoom subscription. So they're actually paying for Zoom, so I don't have to pay for that either. And the Greater National Technology Council that our group is actually a member of is another sponsor of the group. Usually what we tell people is we can give you 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of a meeting to promote your company or service. Give away raffle prizes, gift certificates. Like last month, we gave away 2 $50 gift certificates to Amazon. So, those don't come out of our pocket. Those, are donated by sponsors. If your company is interested in sponsoring a future meeting, please contact Roger. He's the vice president, and he'll make arrangements with you so that we can work something out. Again, I can even skip my little introduction to the group if you wanted 10 or 15 minutes of to talk about your company or service. This meeting will be posted after we've finished on YouTube within a day or two. This is our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of content out there already. If you want to go out there, take a look, browse it, and see what we've got, you might find something very interesting. Again, as I said, we're scheduling meetings now through the end of this year and the beginning of next year. We don't actually have a meeting scheduled for November or the beginning of next year. So it's wide open if you want to do a presentation. Or again, if you know someone, maybe someone we can cajole into presenting. That's great too. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to our folks from SHI, Donald, Pollard, and Paul Woodward, Jr.
Perfect there. Thank you much, Bill. And yeah, definitely happy to be back in front of this group. And if everyone just gives me just a second, I'm going to get our presentation up and going here.
Okay, and I'll monitor the waiting list in the chat.
Perfect. Appreciate that. All righty.
In the chat.
Everybody see the screen okay?
Yes, I see it.
Yep, we're good on my end, Donnie.
Perfect. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining here today. We're definitely excited to talk a little bit about it's not new technology in the Azure space, but it's one that's really, I think, starting to catch on with a lot of customers there who are a traditional VMware type of hypervisor shop. They're on premise, looking to go to the cloud. We're just going to talk a little bit today about the Azure VMware Solution, and kind of how that might play into your strategies and like your migration goals and transformational goals here today. So definitely excited to be here and appreciate everybody joining in. And like Bill said, my name is Donald Pollard. I'm a principal architect for that takes care of the Azure space itself for SHI. So pretty much if it's got a 1 or a 0 flowing through it, generally I'm talking about it one way or the other. So that's what I do. I'm actually here in Nashville. I've worked for all the hospital systems that have 3 letters in them, and before moving on to consulting, and I've been in the cloud world since man, I don't even know, I guess it was Red Dog days, working in there in Azure space. So been doing that. So yeah, I come from a long background of security, identity and access management, all those types of things, and moved into this consulting world here to try to help out additional customers outside of just healthcare, like finance and legal and all the different pillars there. So that's me in a nutshell. And Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Paul Woodward, hybrid cloud architect here at SHI. Been with the company about 4 years. So my background, I spent many different years with other large service providers, with some small service providers, a lot of time actually in the data center, boots on the ground, hands on the keyboard, installing, maintaining, upgrading physical servers, storage, some networking, starting to dabble into the cloud. So with all of that, I take that experience and I like to put together solutions. Hybrid cloud, what does that mean? I mean, there's all sorts of different things, but what I do is I work with our customers on, you're on-prem now, how do we get you to the cloud? What does that bridge look like to get you there? So heavy VMware background, obviously, with presenting on AVS. I've actually presented at VMware user groups around the country and at the VMworld conference a few years back. So pretty comfortable sitting here talking to people about tech, especially like fellow technologists and engineers. So I work, with Donnie's team. We've created quite the service around AVS and getting that deployed and helping our customers understand what it all entails and getting it integrated. I'm excited to be here and talk to everybody today about the product.
Awesome. Thanks, sir. And yeah, as we go through this, you're definitely going to tell this with me for sure that I am not a professional presenter, and I definitely like to have conversations, things like that. So as we're presenting, feel free to throw questions in chat, comments, those type of things. We will have a section at the end. That way, if you want to, vocalize your question or kind of dig in a little bit deeper, we'll be doing that at the end. But throughout the presentation, feel free to throw in some questions there in chat, and I will do my best to remember to actually look at chat and then actually address those as we go through.
And real quick, Donnie, I actually forgot. So I'm up in Wisconsin, nationwide resource, but I was actually engaged. I got engaged in Nashville at the stage on Broadway several years ago. So Nashville's got a little place in my heart.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we've seen plenty of bachelorette parties, so you don't see too many engagements. So that's definitely a good thing. And I went ahead and went off video there just for a little bit because my connection is making me lag a little bit. So I do apologize, but I am nothing good to look at. So shouldn't hurt the presentation at all. So yeah, what we really want to go into is the Azure VMware Solution. We'll refer to it AVS a lot throughout the rest of this presentation. Really what it is just that. It's VMware in a private cloud that sits in the middle of the Azure public cloud. So allows you to go ahead and really like stand up and configure and get going another software-defined data center. It's running there in that Azure native Azure services. So Microsoft goes ahead, they'll run it for you, they'll patch it, make sure everything's up and working, so you can quickly and easily move and or transform your existing workloads. And I think that's pretty much like one of the big things I like about this product is a lot of folks are like, hey, you know, I can't really get into transformation, you know, they're on-prem, I got to relocate everything up to the cloud, or, you know, I might want to go ahead and relocate and I'm there and then I got to wait to fully migrate over before I can actually start, you know, transforming my applications into a little bit more modern stack. With this product, it's really great because you can quickly, easily go ahead and relocate those workloads and transform piece by piece. You don't have to do everything all at once to go to the next objective there. You're actually able to use this together to take care of both goals in one easy motion. So today we're going to go over a lot with kind of digging into what is AVS in general, just kind of a good overview of the technology and the offering. Then we'll be going into specific use cases that we see and reasons that you might want to choose this product. And then we're also going to be going over a little more down in the weeds technical review. So let's kind of start here with, you know, what is AVS? Really, AVS really is that fast path to the cloud more than anything else. It's I want to go ahead and take my workloads, move it up to the cloud as quickly as possible. I don't want to worry about the cost, the effort, the risk of re-architecting those applications or retooling operations and skill sets and things like that. I'll be able to just lift, move it to the cloud and operate how I always have currently in my on-prem environment. And really like having to be able to use those tools that are in your toolbox, you know, from the vCenters, vSpheres, things like that, using those skill sets that you've had years and years of investment in, you can still go ahead and use that. It's just changing the place where the actual bits themselves live. And with this as well, once it's go ahead and it's actually in Azure itself, you can utilize the other Azure native services, you know, all the way from, you know, blob storage, to app service plans and app gateways and Sentinel and Defender for Cloud, all that kind of great stuff that you'll want to use to transform your business and your application stack. You can move that up there and start using new native services that weren't available to you on-prem. And also scalable hardware, you know, especially like through the pandemic, you know, it's really tough to get hardware delivered on time when you really need it. So as your business grows, your needs grow, or hey, I just have a data center refresh coming up, you're able to use this technology here to kind of avoid those pitfalls there of having to invest in 5 years of hardware where I'm not really sure where my business is going to scale and grow to. I can use this as a way to get to the cloud and then refactor my applications, refactor those workloads into different Azure native type abilities there. The other one I really want to kind of hone in on is the enhanced disaster recovery. So I can have a DR plan without having to have another data center, colo, any of those types of things where I have to kind of build everything from the rack to the power, cooling, switches, edge, all that kind of stuff. I can move it here, have a fully functional DR without having to go through that effort. So yeah, it's definitely a simpler, non-disruptive journey to the public cloud. You know, it's rapid, cost-effective, low risk migrations. You don't have to refactor those apps. You don't have to retrofit your infrastructure. The large scale migrations, hundreds and hundreds of VMs could be migrated to the cloud with near zero downtime. And you can have a really solid migration workflow that how everything's going to work, and it can be relied on throughout. And so first question there, HCX is supported here, and we're going to be diving deeply into HCX here in just a couple of slides. So great first question here. But yeah, as far as like hybrid cloud, you're able to go ahead and, like we talked about before, using the same tools that are in your toolbox there. You have folks that are high up and certified, and have been using VMware tools, vSpheres, all of those familiar tools that were in a single pane of glass, whether it's up in Azure in AVS or there on-prem, it's still in that single pane of glass itself there. So it's just going to look like another software-defined data center. And Jeff, great question there. As far as system user assigned managed identities, there are parts and pieces that you absolutely can use that for. As far as inside of AVS, we're going to dive into that a little bit here in just a minute when we go into the technicals. Perfect. But yeah, also want to say, kind of hone in on it is a stretched layer 2 network, WAN optimized. It is ready to go. It is that true cloud within a cloud that keeps everything private. And also, you're not just buying like compute, a hyperscaler that could have hundreds of different customers on there. When you actually get this solution, it is a bare metal host. So your workloads and your VMs are yours. No one else lives on there, to really kind of hone in on that security and that WAN optimization there as well. And a ton of proven partner solutions are being certified every single day to work with the solution here. And here in just a minute, like I said, we're gonna dive deep into vSphere, vCenter, utilizes NSXT, vSAN, and HCX as well, as mentioned in the chat there. Perfect. Some of the use cases there to kind of think about, is this solution going to make sense? Cloud migrations, they can either go really, really quick and easy, or they can take, weeks upon weeks of getting people like up to speed on the portal, getting the tools in place, getting Azure Migrate up and running, and those type of things, which for some of us that's done it a whole lot, it's not a big thing. But for other folks that may not be that familiar with Azure itself, it could take a long time just to go through training and getting skilled up. So this solution here, we don't need to worry about replatforming, and we're able to move those applications in minutes versus weeks with HCX. Definitely keeping those investments and the skills. I know I keep repeating about like, hey, use the tools that are in your toolbox. You've invested in this, but this is a great reason to use this product, is to avoid those soft costs. Everything that's not consumption and not compute, storage, and network. It's all the trainings and the workshops and all of that stuff, and all that years of automation and scripting that you've poured into your environment. You can go ahead and still utilize that. It's just a different place for those VMs to live. We also touched on dedicated DR facilities there. You don't have to buy all that extra equipment that makes a DR facility up and run and have that huge overhead cost. You're just going ahead and purchasing those bare metal hosts, and everything else is using the Azure ecosystem to make that DR happen for you quickly, easily, securely, and reliably. And another great reason is that, as we all know, SQL 2008, 2012, Windows servers, those types of things, those are out of support. And, if you move those up, you get that free extended security updates, and you can pay for those with your Azure credits. So it's a great way. If you've got legacy apps that you're unable at this time to go ahead and update and move to a different OS or a different database platform, this is a great way to go ahead and still utilize those while you're working on upgrading. without any type of downtime, and having all those extra fees for extended security updates comes with this solution here. And also, as we all know, VMware, what they're really, really good at is squeezing the most juice out of that orange there to get the most memory, CPU, getting all your VM workloads optimized as humanly possible. So that is another great benefit. And the one I really like, because I'm kind of lazy, I'm just going to let Microsoft manage the hardware, the cabling, all the networking, and all that kind of stuff, the patching of those hosts. Those are all there. Microsoft will take care of that and give you 99.9% availability, and provides that first level of support. Perfect. And Paul, I'll turn it over to you there, sir.
All right, going back to the VMware guy when we get to this portion. All right, so VMware, I'm sorry, Azure VMware Solution, it's very similar to VMware Cloud and AWS. That one came out first. Microsoft followed suit. So as Donnie mentioned over and over again, it's the same technologies that you may or may not be used to at this point. I don't know everyone's background. So if your career started in the cloud, you may not be familiar with all this. So we'll kind of go into a little bit of detail here. But underneath the hood, AVS is a VMware data center, a software-defined data center running on Azure physical hardware. So it's got the VMware ESXi hypervisor. It's got the vCenter server for overall management. And then where the software-defined piece comes in is the vSAN, the virtual storage. So that takes physical drives on each of those hosts in the cluster, and it breaks it up and presents it as data storage to the environment where you're going to actually store your virtual machine files. And then also VMware's NSX platform, that network virtualization piece. So that's what actually provides the ability to migrate seamlessly, if you will, back and forth internal to your on-premises data center and then up into the Azure AVS solution. What's nice about NSX is it provides microsegmentation within that data center. So not just blocking north-south traffic, but east-west as well. It can do a lot of network monitoring. There's a lot of robust features that go into that, but we're not here to talk about NSX. What's also nice is on premises in your physical data center, you do not need NSX or vSAN to be able to link up into AVS solution. All you need to do is be on a compatible version of vSphere, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then we sync it up. We link the two sites. We do linked mode with the vCenter servers, and then you can start moving workloads back and forth. So again, we've got that operational consistency. It's tools we know, tools that administrators know and have known for years. What we see is oftentimes this solution is used as a quick evacuation of a physical data center. It can be used for bursting capacity if we need to suddenly add, some seasonal services, etc. But then also it's really a kind of an interesting story. Had a client that they had a Moscow data center. And then at the start of the year, something happened where all of a sudden they had to evacuate that Moscow data center. So they turned to the AVS solution to evacuate those virtual machines as quick as they could. So that way they were no longer facing any kind of sanctions or being cut off from their data or their workloads. So, we see we've got the global Azure footprint. I don't know the exact number of locations that AVS solution is available because it changes often. We can get that sent out to the group a little bit later. But they're adding more and more locations that AVS will be supported. And then, it integrates with the Azure portal and the resources manager. So there is, you see here on this slide, Azure AD, the SQL Server, the security. There's a bunch of different services that can be integrated into your VMware solution in Azure. And then obviously your Active Directory, your ability to log in, all of that kind of security, it all plays into it. There's significantly more than the 6 that are shown here available. Once again, that is one that I don't try to memorize them all because as the solution grows and matures, they add more and more. So it's kind of pointless to try and memorize everything that's going on with those. Donnie, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide here. So as he said, Microsoft offers up AVS with 99.9% of uptime. So that's about 9 hours approximately lost every year. So with the fact that it's got the vSAN and everything else underneath the hood, NSX underneath the hood, and the fact that it's sitting in a data center that's got who knows how many servers, physical servers sitting there waiting to be utilized. What is kind of nice about the AVS solution is that if there's a need to do any implementations or if there's a host that fails, all of that software-defined data center piece that's lumped into VMware is going to kick in and add an additional piece of hardware. So you might get a hiccup or a blip, but your uptime should be pretty, you're really not going to notice it because they're going to add an additional host with using a VMware feature called DRS or distributed resource scheduler. It's going to pick that up. It's going to start moving virtual machines around and add the host. 1 second, please. And you can see here, so the minimum on the AVS solution is you're going to want to have a 3-host cluster. That is just that whole fault tolerance built in. I know in the Amazon solution that is offered, you can go down to 1 host just to see what it's like for a little bit of test dev. 2 hosts, again, to start to play around, but 3 hosts at minimum is the sweet spot, and that's what we see here. I would wager because the solution is a little bit newer when you compare it to the AWS solution, that over time that we will be able to spin up a single host of AVS just to do test dev and play with it. But that's kind of like my spitballing here on what the roadmap is for the solution. Donnie, next slide, please. So what we're all used to in the cloud realm is that shared responsibility matrix. So again, underneath the hood, Azure is going to provide that physical hardware, and it's going to install ESXi on the host, keep them patched and upgraded, deploy the software underneath, so the vCenter, the vSAN, and the NSX. But when it gets down to it, the actual configuration, that's going to fall onto the administrators. So some shops may have people who are well-versed in NSX, some may not. Same with vSAN. So that's where you're going to look at like a solutions provider. I mean, there's one right here on the screen with a 3-letter name that can actually help you with the engineering to deploy and manage NSX, vCenter, vSAN, etc. But what's also really nice is because of those really long blue bars we see here on lifecycle management, Azure will take care of your basic host maintenance. So you don't have to pay an engineer or an administrator to sit there and do your host patching. It will automatically do that for you, or they will do that, and they'll notify you, hey, we're going to upgrade you to, let's see what, vSphere 8 was just hit GA. It's not going to be out on AVS for a little bit yet because it is brand new, but they will do those upgrades for you on your behalf. You don't have to worry about that. So that's one less thing that you have to take care of. Again, host patching, ESXi hosts, and then any kind of upgrades when it comes to the versioning of NSX or vSAN. But once you're down into the weeds, let's say they just provide you, here's your host with vSAN installed, then you're going to have to go through and configure your data stores for how big you want them, etc., how you want to name them. All of that is going to fall on your shoulders. And again, same with AWS and Azure. When you're looking at like your guest operating system, your virtual machines, your applications, you are in charge of deploying those, managing them, patching them, keeping them secure, backing them up, etc. And I believe we're going to Donnie.
Absolutely here. Yeah, let me advance this slide here real quick. So yeah, we're going to go real quick here into some use cases, like where this would actually fit in outside of just some of the technicals, like some of the actual workloads and the business objectives that you may have. Yeah, so these are here, like in our opinion, are some of the top use cases that our customers are seeing across this solution here. The first one there is application modernization. I know that's been kind of almost a buzzword and something that a lot of folks are trying to get into. It's just really, really hard when you think about like your workloads that you currently have and trying to modernize them all at once before you really go forth and like try to get out of your data center and those type of things. So, and it's a really tough objective to go to. This use case with this product, again, we'll let you go ahead and move that to the cloud and start taking advantage of those modern Kubernetes and app service plans and then Azure functions and all of those types of things that you may want to be refactoring and re-architecting your application to take advantage of, that you have that. And especially with hybrid applications becoming more and more of a thing that you might want to put like an app gateway. So you can actually share out an application privately with some of your other partners and different companies, things like that. So it just allows you to get it into the cloud, still using that same tool set, and be able to start using those Azure native services that really helps move along your application modernization goals and plans. The second one there is, the cloud migration itself. This is probably, of all these that you're going to see here, probably cloud migration is the absolute number one. The reason that people are trying to go ahead and move to the cloud, rather it be, hey, I just need a virtual desktop, through the pandemic that happened there. I need to go ahead and have applications closer to those, or I need to go ahead and evacuate a data center. I just don't like the contract I'm in. I need to get out of there. I'm shutting down businesses or buildings because I have more of a hybrid workforce now. It's another great reason to go ahead and move into that cloud space itself. And also the infrastructure refresh. That is definitely one where you may not want to go ahead and have a 5-year commitment on a piece of hardware, or I just can't get a piece of hardware into my environment. I want one, but I just can't get it. It's a great way to go ahead and get that same level of service and that same commitment and for your VMs without having to wait that time period or make that investment in the infrastructure itself. The other ones there is the data center expansion. Hey, my business is exploding. I got new workloads. I just acquired another company, those type of things, or, really focusing heavy into DevOps here and having a lot of dev teams. I just need more capacity. I need more things that people can go ahead and deploy code out to, or add a new workload. And it always comes down to, I don't know about you all, but any job I've ever had is unplanned projects usually kind of dominate, and be able to go ahead and serve up like that hypervisor, that workload, and be able to have that on demand to go ahead and take care of those projects, and then also go ahead and shrink it down when they're done, and not have to have that server that I purchased for that one project that got completed in 90 days. I now have to find other uses for it because I'm going to have this thing in my data center for 5 years. And of course, the Windows and the SQL 2008, 2012, I want to avoid, having those extra fees for the security updates. The other one there, cloud virtual desktops, whether you're on Horizon with VMware, or I have Azure Virtual Desktops. What really makes virtual desktops work really well is having your applications and your workloads as close to that cloud desktop as humanly possible. So be able to go ahead and have a use case there to move those applications up to where my virtual desktops are living will only give your end users a much better experience. And using that one there also for DR and desktop as a service, be able to put in automations and those type of things. It's a great use case for that. And of course, disaster recovery, whether you're going to a net new, where we're looking to replace the one we have and spin that colo down, or just a complement. You may just need to, hey, I got these new workloads, I need DR. I don't want to add them to where I'm at right now because I'm at capacity on that hardware. So it allows you just to optimize, reduce, resize, spread things out for a much lower cost, and you're able to go ahead and scale as your business scales. Yeah, and some of the business outcomes that we definitely see is it's definitely an innovation accelerator. Once you're up in the cloud, now I got access to all these cool toys, all these things actually be able to make my business better, from Power Apps to Azure DevOps to the app plans and all that kind of good stuff, Cosmos DB and PaaS, SQL, all that type of stuff. I now have access to that. and I'm able to go ahead and enable my developers. So they're able to move faster, they're flexible, you keep them happy because they're able to use the services that they want to use to be able to push the envelope forward and be able to make your applications as modern as humanly possible. And you can take all those savings that you had from migrating from on-prem to the cloud and reinvest those into that application modernization workflow there. But yeah, other ones there is the uplift operations. Again, as your business grows and you may have a major acquisition or a merger, you're able to go ahead and scale out quickly, easily. And then let's say on the other end of the coin, you can scale back down when you're done. It's, whether it be 1 year for that workload to live or forever, you can go ahead and scale up, scale down, what's going to make sense for your business and keep you continually optimized. And of course, reducing the costs, because I know my boss is a big fan of anytime I can say a reduced cost, I usually get a gold star on that one. So whether you're using on-demand, reserved instances, things like that, you can get a lower total cost of ownership, with a solution like this compared to on-premise. And also moving from CapEx to OpEx and having, you don't have that extra cost and that extra burden up top for migrations planning, tool set evaluation, installation, all that kind of stuff, the application rework, all that goes away. All you're doing is just moving a workload like you've always done inside your data center. This time it's just going up to the cloud itself. Perfect. And Paul, I'm going to hand that back to you, sir.
Sure thing. If you want to go ahead and jump over to the next slide right away here. So, we talked about like the pieces under the hood for the VMware piece, HCX, or I'm sorry, vSphere, vSAN, NSX. So you can see in the top right there, these are the current supported versions of vSphere, vCenter, vSAN that are running in the AVS data centers. So, we got 7.0 update 3 again. 8.0 just went GA, so I don't know the exact timeline of when that'll be pushed out to the AVS solution, but it's generally, from what I've seen, not right away. Obviously, they got to do some testing and whatnot. And then right below that, you'll see we've got the actual Azure hardware. So currently, we only included the model AV36 on here because that is the one that is available across every location with AVS available. There are 1 or 2 other host sizes that are available, but they are on a location by location basis, so we didn't want to include that. So you can see here they're pretty robust. They've got the 36 cores, 576 gigs of memory, and then the NVMe drives and the SSD to build those vSAN pools. Excuse me. So again, you've got large underlying hosts to go and build these clusters. Top left here, you see we've got the minimum of 3 nodes per vSphere cluster, and then the maximum was 16 nodes per vSphere cluster. So for those who may not be aware, a vSphere cluster is just the way that they are broken up within that management tier within vCenter server. So you can have, let's say, production cluster, and you can put up to 16 of these AV36 nodes into that cluster. And then overall in your private cloud instance, you can have up to 96 total nodes running with that, again, that 99.9% uptime guarantee. And then what's really interesting about this solution is the way that you can consume it. You can see here we've got 3 different options. So the on-demand, you can go right now, log in to Azure, pull out your credit card, and spin up a 3-node cluster. It's not going to be cheap. You're probably not going to want to do that. But in an emergency instance, or if you're going to test it out, you're not certain if that's going to be a good fit for your company, it's not a bad way to go about it. And then you just turn it off when you're done. You're only billed for the amount of time that it's utilized. The more cost-effective ways of going about it are the 1 and the 3-year reserved instances. If I'm recalling correctly, and please don't quote me, I believe it's a 30% savings on 1 year and up to 50% on 3 years. So there's obviously really good reasoning to look at a long-term buy-in to the solution. And then there's a couple of different purchasing models. I'm not a Microsoft licensing expert, but I know it can be included in your agreement, or you purchase with your Microsoft agreement, as well as at the VMware conference Explore that just occurred back in late August, early September. There is now a package from VMware where you can purchase the AVS solution on a VMware ELA as well. I'm don't believe that's quite ready yet, but again, multiple different ways to consume and pay for the solution. And then you can see here, the big concern when you get a solution like this is what happens with support. So you can see end-to-end customer support by Microsoft with VMware directly supporting Microsoft. So if you have an issue, you're talking to Microsoft. They're not going to say, oh, this is a VMware issue, call VMware. They're not going to push it around. You are going to talk to Microsoft, and they are going to work on the back end if it's something that they can't take care of. They have that partnership agreement with VMware to be able to operate that support. You're still opening one ticket. You're not calling around. You're not jumping around, because everyone wins when we play nicely together. It's the same way that operates on the VMware Cloud solution on AWS. There's a button. It's that one throat to choke that everyone needs, and it actually works like that. It's not no blame shifting, no pushing it around. They've really strived to make sure that that's not a hang up when people go to invest into the solution. Donnie, next slide, please.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate to what they're saying, Paul, especially when it comes to that hardware and that model, that AV36, that one's available and almost everywhere. They are coming out with different, I think they have 2 other models right now with some different compute and storage and memory as well. They're available in select. You're going to see more and more different flavors of the hardware that you can use in the solution come out over this next year. So just want to kind of highlight that before we moved on.
Yeah, no problem. And then something that we're going to talk about a little bit later, you can see you're getting a pile of RAM and a pile of CPU on those, but the storage could be an issue. There are solutions that Microsoft has worked to address that, because if you have to add a node just to add more storage, but you don't need the compute, it can get pricey. But I'm not gonna steal Donnie's thunder on that one. All right, so the question was asked earlier about VMware HCX. So HCX is Hybrid Cloud Exchange. That is the quickest way to migrate a VMware or an on-premises data center into the AVS solution or the VMC solution. So what it does is it operates, you've got a running virtual machine in your on-premises data center. It's going to replicate those changes over to the AVS solution. And then once it's up to date, you pull the trigger, it's going to cut it over. So it's, you see here live, non-disruptive, large scale migrations. You're not shutting them down. It's not like the old ways where if you had a site to site, you were trying to vMotion it over, you had to, if you got a large VM, you turned it off to speed up the process. This can be done such that it's non-disruptive. Obviously, your mileage will vary on how long some of these things take, but they've really made it so it's an easy way to cut over. And then you can also see here we've got the KVM and the Hyper-V to the AVS migration as well. So you can replicate other workloads into the AVS solution. And then they've thought it through such that if you've got an application that depends on, you've got an app server, a load balancer, if you've got a SQL server on the back end, you can make up those mobility groups to make sure that everything goes at once. Obviously, when you're looking to migrate and plan out this whole solution, you're going to do your application dependency mappings. You're going to figure out who's talking to what if you don't know it already. But when you actually go to do that migration, those pieces are built in, so you're not accidentally forgetting something behind. So again, you see here those faster migration times, that zero downtime, low disruption. It's really meant to move you as quick as it can. And then the customer context. So this is a VMware example. I can't speak to it, but they're with the HCX doing the bulk of the work on the back end. It takes fewer people and a shorter amount of time to do that failover, instead of, again, linking the 2 vCenters, your on-premises and the one in the cloud, right click, vMotion it over, waiting for the actual virtual machine to process. Now I believe we are on to Donnie.
Excellent there. So outside of the actual hardware and those type of things, how does this actually fit into your Azure tenant itself? And again, this really is it's a private cloud that's going to sit inside your public cloud tenant. And since you are putting that inside your public cloud tenant there, you can go ahead and actually utilize landing zones like you would for other type of workloads. I think last time I was presenting this group, I think I talked for an hour and a half about landing zones. I'm going to spare you from that today, but I just want to show this slide here is that as you have your cloud adoption framework, enterprise at scale, landing zones, if that's applicable to your business and your sides, you can actually do the same type of thing. So you can have your access controls, your Azure policies, going ahead and splitting connectivity out from the actual AVS solution as well. Be able to kind of give you that modularization, be able to spin on a workload, spin it off. AVS just becomes that next workload for you. So you're able to add that into your current architecture without having to re-architect your entire Azure footprint. It's very easy to bring on. And then if you go ahead and I migrated everybody into AVS, but eventually I got really into Azure and all the other native services, and I moved everything out of there. It's really easy to go ahead and prune that off the tree once done. So that's a great one. Anybody wants any additional context on landing zones, definitely happy to speak to that. Some things with I just want to kind of address like the managed identity. I believe, and I'm going to follow up on this one because that was a great question. The managed user or the system, I believe on the Azure front, it does use that, but inside of AVS itself, it's a different identity and access management system there. But I'm going to follow up on that one. But that was a great question. I'll be happy to put some stuff out there at nashazure.com. I'll put a discussion on there once I get 100% answer because I'm never happy with 90%. So, excuse me. Networking. So networking is definitely the part that I would say, like to myself as an Azure guy, definitely looks way different from anything like native we used before. Basically because that is a private cloud, that AVS is treated as a private cloud. It has its own Microsoft Enterprise Edge device there, and you also have your very first one that's on the edge of your public tenant. So ExpressRoute is definitely the recommended path. And then you go ahead and utilize ExpressRoute Global Reach to go from your public side over to the private AVS side itself. And that also goes from your on-prem. So it would go ExpressRoute to your public side, that enterprise edge there, and then another ExpressRoute going over to the public side. Oh, I'm sorry, the private side there for AVS. Now, site-to-site VPN it's here about like 6 months ago. It was like, do it, but just for testing and use cases. Now it's actually moved into, it is fully supported. But just know that depending on your workloads, and if you're in a true hybrid state where I have, half my app is on-prem and, like the web servers and things like that are up in AVS, you are going to have that VPN overhead on those. So really utilize tools like, NetFlow and, Traffic Manager and things like that. Utilize the tools that are in Azure to make sure, you're not, the pipe isn't too small for you to actually have a good experience with your application. But the networking piece, it is very different from your normal native type of stuff. But really, once you kind of set those main pieces there, whether it be ExpressRoute or site-to-site VPN inside your tenant, everything runs really, really well and has that same uptime availability that we saw with the rest of the Azure services. Perfect here. And this one here, Paul alluded to this earlier. It's like, hey, I got all the compute and memory I need. I just need more storage. And I need new, faster storage because, I got SQL workloads. I got all the different types of app workloads that are actually going to need really fast storage. So this one right now is in public preview. Got this running in my lab at the moment here. Is they're able to actually utilize the Azure NetApp files, especially for your workloads that need like this high I/O. And I'm going to be beating on this thing 24/7. You're able to go ahead and use that Azure NetApp files, that native service. Just requires that connection over. ExpressRoute Ultra is definitely the suggested one because if you're needing that much throughput, you want to make sure your network has the same throughput there. So improving that storage to compute density and also be able to scale that storage. If I need a high performing storage and I need a whole bunch of it, it's a great solution without having to buy a bunch of nodes that would have, a bunch of idle CPU and memory there. Also supports, full NFS data stores as well.
And real quick before you move on, Donnie, I just want to jump in on this one. So back at Explore, I was actually in a session with Azure, with NetApp and VMware. They were looking at the NetApp files integration into VMware Cloud and AWS, but again, it's pretty much the same solution for AVS. And what they were showing is by utilizing the NetApp files piece, when someone like myself or Donnie comes in to help you like plan out a deployment of AVS, we're going to look at how much data you actually utilize and then calculate how much data we can put onto the utilizing the NetApp files piece. The demonstration that NetApp had shown us was, let's say, I want to say it was like 60 or 50 nodes of the cloud solution without, just based on the number of petabytes of data that they needed. By integrating the NetApp files, they were able to drop it down to like 10, because again, the biggest piece of any of the sizing across all of these VMware on blank solutions, VMware on hyperscaler solutions, is the storage. And there's unfortunately not an easy way to go around that. But with the Azure NetApp files, it's a real easy way to save on that space, save on that consumption of extra hosts by looking at this third-party tool.
Yeah, great point there. I mean, whether it be like storage or like, security and all these other, or like, hey, I want to use like Palo on my front end and all these different things that Azure has available to us. It's just that when you need something, they have a solution for it. You're able to get those on demand. There's some architecture, some things you got to configure, but really you don't have to wait for purchasing and procurement and shipping and getting things racked and stacked. I'm able to go ahead and scale what I need, whether it be storage or just the native services itself. Those options are now available to me in ways that, they're just, it's a little more challenging on-prem. Move on to the next one here. So yeah, this is what we kind of look at for a migration methodology with this solution. We always start off with like, hey, we're going to discover, assess, and prioritize applications. It's just going into your existing VMware, seeing what's there. Go ahead and stack ranking, understanding which applications are your business criticals, the dependency mapping, all the stuff that Paul was talking about before. That's where we go in and really kind of build up that plan. What would it look like? What would it take? What's the timeline? Those type of things, any risk factors to actually do a migration. So we definitely do that in that very first phase. Then we're developing this cloud migration plan, whether it be just a simple lift and shift rehost. That might be great just for going to native Azure, and we're gonna go through and assess, it's not just the ones and the zeros, but the skill sets and the tools that you may currently be using, your automations and things like that. Also, like, as a replatform, a good use case here. Like, hey, I want to lift, but I also want to modernize. I want to flip this app from traditional IaaS based to maybe a container based, where you may use a Tanzu or just AKS or things like that. That's where we're going to go and really try to determine what that looks like. And again, getting the budgets and the timelines and things like that really mapped out so it can be actionable. But for AVS here, what we really love for this tool is that relocate. I just need it moved quickly. Don't do anything to it. Just move it as is. Let's get it up there, get it running. And to my end users and my customers and things like that, it's like nothing ever changed. Everything is running peak efficiency, and it's cost optimized. And I forgot to click through these because that's what I do there. So same type of thing that we're just talking about is that whether you're looking to modernize or you're looking to just move as is, it's just getting it there at the right time and at the right price to make sure you have that consistency and exactly when and where these types of parts of this project could actually go ahead and be done. So you can map that out and get that on a roadmap and get teams rallied around it. And the last thing I want to mention before we move on to our next section here is, I know I've been talking a lot about modernization and application modernization. Again, I just want to reiterate, you can move this stuff and really decide like, hey, I may only want to play around with application modernization for one of my small apps that's not business critical, or I may want to have a larger app. It allows you to go ahead and do that in future phases, or I just want to chunk part of an application a lot easier, a lot faster using these types of services compared to anything traditional like we would have to do on-prem. So this allows you to have all the tools there ready to set up. All you got to do is architect, configure, and deploy. Perfect. And Paul, I will slide that over to you.
All right, thank you, Donnie. Just real quick plug here for SHI and how we handle AVS migrations. We're going to sit down with you. We're going to get that landing zone out there and deployed. We're going to work with your team to design it, and obviously, we're going to take a look at again, those application mappings, application dependencies, the timing it's going to take, etc. And then once we get that all sorted out and make sure our plan is ready to rock and roll, then we're going to go ahead and deploy that SDVC and then configure that networking, that NSX piece, the your site-to-site connections, etc. Make sure everything is secure, because that's very important in this world. And then we're going to do a couple of test migrations with you, and then we'll kick off the full migration. And again, we'll do it in those batches. We'll find the applications that move together, or if we want to start with low priority workloads to make sure we're not putting any undue stress on application managers who might not be sure about what we're about to do. So there's definitely a few different ways that we can go about it. But again, that's, reach out to us if you want to learn a little bit more about that. And then, we can go into greater detail about that migration process. And then next up, Donnie.
Yeah, Paul, and just kind of add on to that, we do put on, and we suggest this, you can take this framework from how long it takes actually to start at day one to be completely done. This is kind of like that 4 to 7 is for, a few hundred VMs, is really focusing in on making sure you have that landing zone there and in place first, get that deployed, get that configured. It's just setting that foundation for success moving forward. From your security, compliance, and all that type of stuff that comes with a good designed landing zone, take that into consideration. And I really feel like that's the true path to success with this product or any other Azure native one. Really putting in the time and the effort to get that right and make it to where your environment is an enabling environment. You're enabling your dev teams and other teams there to go and innovate without having to go back and look over people's shoulders, things like that, because you set that minimum viable secure product, that playground there to go and do some cool stuff for your businesses. Perfect.
So one of the big use cases that we do see, as Donnie called out earlier for AVS, is as a DR target, as a secondary data center site. So there are a couple of solutions that are natively built into AVS to handle that scenario. So we've got the VMware Site Recovery Manager for hyperscalers, or SRM. So that is a product that's actually going to take a lot of the work out of replicating, building those runbooks, etc. So it provides the disaster recovery orchestration. It's going to do pre-configured runbooks. You can set this up so that your application is ready to rock and roll when you fail it over. It'll make sure that you have all of your VM dependencies lined up, as well as you can incorporate scripting and automation languages. And then also the tricky part, change the IPs. So it's going to do all of that work on a few different, obviously there's some time that's going to go into the configuration and setup, but a few clicks later when you need to do that failover or even failover testing, it's going to set that up. Now, this is an additional service on top of AVS, so there's going to be a cost to it. I believe it's on a per workload basis, but it's an option that you can add on. So you can not only go from on-prem into the AVS solution, but you can go cross regions from one AVS solution, one AVS region to another. So it does provide that ability to have multi-cloud, if you want to make sure that your loads are balanced across different sites or fail over to other sites. You want to jump over to the next slide as well, please, Donnie. And with that, you can now also fail over from the Azure VMware Solution over to VMware Cloud on AWS. So, we hear people, I don't want to be locked into a single vendor, even though when you're on-prem, you're locked into VMware, but you can set it up that you're failing over and you can go back and forth between both VMware Cloud on the hyperscaler solutions. So it's pretty cool if you ask me. I mean, I've personally not deployed it, so I can't go into how like technical or deep that like it is to get going, but again, it provides a little bit of relief. Like, we're not tied into one cloud, or if you need to move out of AVS into VMware Cloud on AWS or vice versa, there are ways to do it. That's not a lot of work. And again, it's got those same run books, testable, etc. So that way, again, you are going to be able to go back and forth, you test it, make sure it's ready to go. So in the, hopefully it doesn't happen where you need to fail it over, but you can have confidence in your solution that it is ready to go when that time comes. And I believe I am back to Donnie. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's one more thing I did want to bring up. Those are the VMware native solutions that, for failing over and into the cloud and protecting your data. There are also a handful of other partners out there, third-party solutions such as Zerto, I believe Veeam, and Jetstream. Donnie, do you recall the other ones off the top of your head?
I don't, because they keep announcing like new ones like every day, but like, yeah, those are like probably the big heavy hitters that they announced at Explore.
Yeah. So again, there are the products that, again, your infrastructure team, your VM teams are familiar with. They already have, knowledge and skill sets around. So you may not have to learn SRM if they're not using it already. If you're using, Zerto replication, boom, you can now point it at the AVS solution.
And with that, I think we are at the question phase. So definitely I want to open it up, and please, any questions that you have, we're definitely here to chat about it.
Let's see, are there any limitations with AVS? I mean, realistically, the ones that come to mind are, again, like the storage could be cost prohibitive, but again, there are third-party solutions. And then because it is a little bit newer, the third-party ecosystem is growing. But as Donnie just said, we've got a handful of backup products that work into it. Those will keep growing. Otherwise, you can look at it as a Microsoft hosted VMware data center. It's still the same underlying hardware, same technology that has been used on premises for years. So really, there's nothing top of mind that I throw up a huge red flag for me. We got a couple more coming in too.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Paul. Probably, AVS limitations are probably the same limitations, that you would have VMware on-prem, since it's running basically almost the exact same thing. It's just where it's hosted, how it's hosted, and now I got access to all these other cool toys to go ahead and bring to my solution.
The second question here about Azure Migrate, I don't know the answer to that. Donnie, are you aware?
Yes, actually it is. So that is the preferred Microsoft Azure way to actually go through and discover the current VMware environment there on-prem. So it is baked in. You can either like RV tools or like any of those, like you could pump that in or just have it go ahead and deploy out. There is some Microsoft Learn information on how to use Azure Migrate to just get a discovery and dependency mapping and all that kind of stuff. Same stuff that you've done for traditional native services with Azure. Use that same tool set, same process that you do for looking at this, and they'll actually give you the price the price breakdown, like number of nodes and all that type of stuff there built in. So they did put some money and some effort to making sure Azure Migrate could still be that source of truth there.
Great.
So
Excellent.
I was about to say, we got a third question here. Do you have to have a vCenter deployed first, or can you onboard the whole solution from scratch? So yes, you can go log into Azure and go find, the AVS solution and just launch an AVS software-defined data center. So having like an on-premises vCenter is not necessary. So if you want to test run run a trial, figure it out, see if it's going to make sense for your environment, yeah, you can just spin that up. I do, obviously we kept mentioning like integrating to your on-prem because it's the world has spent 20 years on VMware, so we're looking at the options for moving out of the physical data center and up into the cloud, but it's not necessary. Again, when you launch the installer, the configuration for the AVS solution, it's going to deploy a vCenter up in that solution as part of the overall process. So that's not necessary on-prem. We've
got another one here. When comparing cost, is it about the same cost to use AVS versus Azure to move X number of VMs? Great question. With that one there, there is going to be the cost of like the compute and the VMs and things like that. It's typically, from what I'm seeing, like compute to compute and storage to storage. It could be a little higher on the AVS side, but as far as like all those soft costs, there's a potential to be, it dramatically reduces the cost, actually total cost of ownership to move to AVS. It really depends on your business and what skill sets and what familiarity you have with native services. Because like I tell everyone, this is not a competitor to just traditional Azure IaaS and VMware. And yeah, I'm sure like the Azure guy and the VMware guy could like nerd out about this all day long, just nerd fight and figure out which one's better. It's more comes down to your business and your skill sets and what you use. So costs, yeah, AVS is probably going to have a little more upfront cost because you're having to buy like 3 dedicated nodes right up front, and you definitely want to look at like I need at least a year to 3 years to reserved instance to drive those costs down. So if you have enough VMs actually to fill up those hosts and to utilize it and maximize it, it's not going to be that far off. It's going to be pretty comparative, but when you add in all the soft costs and the toolings and the trainings and all that kind of stuff, it can really skew towards AVS could be a much cheaper overall solution.
To the question about if someone was using Terraform against vCenter, could they deploy VMs into the AVS cluster? I am not aware of any restrictions that would prevent that. You should still be able to hit vCenter via API calls. I will say something that I should have brought up when we were talking about the overall architecture. With these solutions, with the VMware Cloud on the hyperscalers, you do not have root access to the hosts. That is how both Microsoft and AWS automate the deployment and management of those hosts, so that you do not have that. So if there's something you are doing in your on-premises data center that absolutely requires the root access to the host, you're not gonna be able to do that up into the cloud. But any other automation pieces that you're utilizing when it comes to vCenter should not be a problem.
And we got one, is there any documentation that compares the total cost of ownership versus traditional data center deployments? I know VMware has those. I don't have the link directly on me, but I could try to find that and go ahead and get that over to you as soon as possible. It kind of like skews the numbers as far as like which one's going to be cheaper, this, that, and the other. I'm not really sure if they get all the way down to like, hey, it costs this much per square foot in a data center to run, but I could definitely check on that and get those. But I know there's some numbers out there that kind of does some comparisons. So we'll go ahead and get that information out.
And I don't know if you know the answer to the next one, Donnie. I am not certain on the vConsole piece.
That I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest with you. That's a great question. One we can definitely follow up on.
Yeah, I'm going to be sure to save the questions here. So if there's anything we need to double back on and follow up, we will.
Yeah, if you want to post answers to the discovery the discussion group in, in the team group. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll compile these, and so I know we have managed identities and things like that to follow up on, and we'll be happy to post that so the rest of the group can go ahead and get some answers. Hopefully with some links too, because I'm a nerd. Like show me your work.
Yep.
And it's looks like we got one more. If we move to AVS quickly, would using Azure Migrate be the preferred path to then move to Azure VMs? I'm going to let that one to Donnie, but I believe the answer would be yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Azure Migrate. I think it's a great tool, and you can absolutely use Azure Migrate to get you to AVS quickly. Do the discovery work and get everything in there, and then utilize the VMware tools actually to do the actual migration itself through HCX. And once you're there, you're like, hey, I want to go ahead and now move this over to native Azure IS VMs. Azure Migrate can be used right again to help you move there. So I'd say it's a preferred path. There's tons of tools out there that does it as well, but I'm a huge fan of Azure Migrate, so I'll just be a fanboy on that one and say absolutely.
Johnny, you want to go ahead and jump to the next slide. If anybody has questions after this wraps up, you can find us online. Here's our email addresses. We're both on LinkedIn. Glad to accept requests. But yeah, any other questions pop up afterwards, you can hit us up, or again in the discussion, you will keep an eye on that as well.
So yeah, if there's no other questions here, we'll give everybody a couple seconds to post some if there's any straggling questions. If not, Bill, we'll go ahead and just turn this over to you. And thank you very much for having us. This was great. We had a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you for a great presentation. I was really impressed. So I wouldn't say that if I didn't mean it. Good job. Excellent job. Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to end the meeting. Stop the recording, end the meeting. We'll see you all hopefully next month.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time and listening to us talk about this. So see you guys next month.
Great.